Do I speak into the mic there? Okay. Hi, this is a talk about Browserify. This is just going to be an introduction, and we're really just going to cover for one use case for someone who has no experience whatsoever with Browserify, how to just get up and running with their first Browserify experience. So Browserify, what is it? It's a way that allows you to use requires in your client-side code. All right, so all the requires that we see in server-side Node.js can now be in our client-side. And this is how I would, if you have a laptop, you can go ahead and follow along with npm install -g Browserify. So if you want to go ahead and do that now. Is the audio?
Sorry, what are we doing?
npm install -g Browserify.
That can work anywhere.
Yes. All right, so assuming you have that installed, so what can we do now that we have that command available? We can now use thousands upon thousands of free available modules in npm in our client. That's really awesome. We can also use a large number of core node modules like query string. And we can also use our own files and simply require them in our client. Actually, a really good point about this. So we have basically 1 and 2, which is we have the entire node distribution of npm modules available to us. And also being able, number 2, we have the ability to use most of the core node modules. That's a really important point because now that means we're going to have them in our client. But then the third point is a little bit more subtle, and that's the idea that we can construct our own client-side JavaScript and organize it in such a way that it resembles modular architecture exactly, because we'll be demonstrating all 3 examples as we go in. So the first case is just we want to look at a node module in the wild, and for example, async. All right, so our first step is we're going to have some HTML. This is going to be our base requirement, and we just need a script tag that points to our JavaScript. Oops. And the second part is we need our JavaScript itself. So this is zooming. All right, so again, we have HTML, and then we also need some JavaScript. So in this JavaScript example, I have async, and that's a very popular server-side JavaScript Node.js module, but we can also use it in the client. And this is the third step. We're going to turn index.js, which is this file, into something called bundle. And this is the use case that I'm really going to outline, which is Browserify index.js -o bundle.js. So what's going on here is that this command, Browserify, takes an argument which is a JavaScript file, and then the -o option says, okay, we want to output it to this file here called bundle.js. And that bundle.js is referred to in our HTML. And so that bundle.js is where Browserify will do its transformation. And it will pull in all the requires that it needs to, and do some other Browserify magic. So that's how we can, all right, so that's example one, which is just using a node module from the NPM library. And so I also talked about how we can use our own module like an NPM module. So we can use our own code and require it, just like a publish module. And the reason why I would like to do this is because we can increase our amount of organization by having our functionality divided into files. So let me demonstrate it here. So here's an example. So suppose we want to write our own library, lib.js, and we're going to have one function. So we say exports.myfunction equals function, which takes a text and returns text to uppercase. And now in some other file, in other, let's say, index.js, we can say var mylib equals require ./lib.js. And I just want to point out here, we have a // and that indicates the current directory that we're in. So now we can say mylib.myfunction cyberwizard, and it should return the all caps version of that, cyberwizard. So again, referencing back here, that's our function. And that's how it would be used. Okay. All right, that's it for my slides. Okay, so these are some examples that I just kind of wanted to go over. So here you see some HTML, and this is the bundle.js that I was referring to earlier. And we're going to do something with this. So let's look at the JavaScript that is associated with it. All right, so in this example, we're going to use a core node module called QueryString. And how many of you know what QueryString does? Okay. All right, so QueryString actually looks at the URL portion of your URL and just returns, it's able to parse parts of your URL header, so parts of your URL, so that it can obtain the query variables. So I'll demonstrate that later, but what's important to notice is that this QS is a core node module, that line right there. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the QueryString portion, and when the window is loaded, we can parse it. And then we're going to put mydiv, the contents of that into mydiv. All right. So this is our query string. Okay, so right now we have no arguments to in our URL header. So we can add some. So we can say username equals ampersand JavaScript equals yes. All right, so if you see that right here, we have in the URL portion, we have our query variables. And then we have that interpreted here. So again, to look back at that code. So what we did is this part grabs the query string, and then this part parses it into an object, and then this part puts it into the div. So we can add some more things. Ampersand. So that's just like a really rudimentary example of how. Example.
How do you compile it?
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. So if you notice here, we have 3 files. Let's move this over a little bit. Index.js, index.html, and bundle.js. This bundle.js was produced by Browserify. All sorts of stuff there. So, how do we get that? So let me install Browser.
It's gonna take forever.
Oh, it's
You don't have to do this part.
Is your code up somewhere? I just want to follow along.
yeah, it is. This code is at github.com/root2pon / talk Browserify.
I have a question. Can I use any NPM module in my client side?
Not any module, most modules. So any module that wants to do, for instance, network communication, obviously would not be a candidate. Basically, you're going to be using anywhere there's a module that doesn't use HTTP requesting or some other type of network activity is generally going to be okay. So you want to research it, but you can just give it a shot and see if it works. And I think Browserify will let you know if that module doesn't work out right. Okay, so all right, we installed it. Example 1. All right, so let me this. All right. So here we just have 2 files, index.html and index.js, and what we're going to do is we're going to type in Browserify, the file that we want to change, index.js, and then the output file. That's going to be bundle.js.
your package JSON is invalid in your parent directory. I already see it. You're missing a comma after example 1.
Example 2.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we fixed the package, and we were able to produce our bundle in bundle.js. And that's what we get. So that's just a very simple example. I wanted to talk about real quickly, because you'll be able to use this right away in your projects. jQuery 2, which I know probably a lot of you do use, can be used right away inside your JavaScript. So what I mean by that is, so this file we want to transform with Browserify, but since it's going to be in the client, it can be handy to be using a tool like jQuery. And in this case, we're able to reference the jQuery object right here, the $, inside our file. And that should be fine as long as we include jQuery beforehand. Right there.
Why can't I just Browserify jQuery?
It doesn't need to be Browserify for jQuery 2. If you want to use jQuery 1, then you do have to use jQuery Browserify, which is specifically developed for, basically I think the jQuery team recognized that it would be used in Node projects, and so that's one of the things they did. You can read about it on the npm jQuery page.
You have to do it before you include your bundle.
So I was thinking what would be great is if we could just do an example together. So in this directory we have so I was thinking, okay, let's try doing a simple jQuery, or sorry, a simple Browserify example, and we can kind of collaboratively decide what we want to do with it. So in our head, we're going to have a script tag, and we're going to point it to something. We'll just call it my bundle. Text JavaScript.
Do you have to put a script inside of the head when you're using Browserify?
No, you don't.
Okay. You just put it in the head usually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I got you.
it's anywhere JavaScript can go. It's where you can put in Browserify code. Now, does anyone have a module that they would like to use?
Voxel.js.
Voxel.js?
Voxel.js.
Okay. Let's see. Let's use a simpler one. What's handlebars?
Basically templating. It's
Okay.
like EJS, it's just really simple for the Browser template.
So how would that work? Would like
How about Lodash? We can just like map.
There you go.
okay, Lodash. Is that right? All right. So, what do we want to do with Lodash? What does Lodash do actually?
It provides some like functional programming toolkits, but you can use stuff like mapping and filtering a list, or like reducing a list or something like that.
Okay, let's do a map.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to use a server-side JavaScript utility called Lodash, and we're going to have it transform some list. Let's say a list of integers. Original list. Let's say 3, 5, 7.
And then it takes the list, yeah, and then you're up on a single item. So yeah, exactly.
All right. So yeah. We'll just multiply every element in this list by 2. So we should get back 6, 10, 14, 22, 26, and 34. And then we'll put this list into the div. Document.getElement by ID, my div. Dot inner h. Okay, so this list right here, so the question was, what does JSON stringify do? And JSON stringify will take an object in JavaScript and return a string representation of that object. So this array, for instance, is an object, and we can get back the text version of that object, suitable for putting into inner HTML. All right, so now we have that. And now we're going to run Browserify index.js -o bundle.js. Okay. Aha.
Wow.
So there you go.
Magic.
What about
Oh,
watching?
questions? Yeah.
What about watching if you don't want to rerun Browserify every time?
Yeah, we remember that option. But I know it's
You could use
when
watch.
files change.
Yeah.
Which one do you just indirectly?
Watchify.
All right, so that's my presentation. Oh, are there any questions?
So if I built something for a client and I want to distribute it on NPM,